welcome for being here today. It's wonderful to see all of you. We're going to talk about some innovations in instruction that we're doing at Western Oregon University. Today, Adrian, Amy, who's unfortunately not able to be here today, Sue, and myself, Dan, will be presenting, and then we'll sit down and go through some panel questions from the audience. One of the things that we're doing is using templates in Canvas. So Adrian has graciously created some templates to streamline the course process of creating courses and designing them in Canvas. So one of the things that we've done is make a video that the QR code on our slides can send you to that tells you a little bit about why we made these templates and what they can be useful for. And we're going to tell you about sort of the content of that video today. So what are the needs? We did a university-wide student survey and heard from the students about what they liked and did not like about Canvas. And what we found is there was a lot of positive feedback and a lot of negative feedback. And what we took away from this, both from students telling us and from the variety of responses, is that there was inconsistent use of Canvas and there was inconsistent quality when Canvas was used. So we started taking action to make Canvas more consistently used and to make the design of Canvas courses more consistent, to make it more simple for students to engage with their course content. Why would we use templates from the faculty perspective? It can help faculty in a variety of ways. It can reduce the amount of time that it takes a faculty member to create and set up their Canvas course. It can reduce the administrative time that faculty spend answering student questions about how to find information or about how to access course content if the course design is similar to the other courses that students are taking. And it can help the faculty member more easily navigate their own Canvas course and reduce the amount of time that a faculty member is sort of fussing about inside of their own course because they can find what they've put in there more easily because it's a consistent design with all of their courses. Now I'm going to pass over to Adrian, who's going to walk through how to find the template and give a little demo of the template.
So the first way that you can find our template is if you would like to have it put into a development shell. These shells are useful because they're not attached to terms. You can update them. They won't have students in them, and you can just keep them around kind of long term. So to do that, you'll go to our website, which is wu.edu/CTL, and then you'll go to the resources page, scroll to frequently used links, and then you'll click create a Canvas development shell.
Thank you, Adrian. And now we're going to pass over to Sue Kunda to hear about a course that was created by a faculty member that unfortunately couldn't be here today, and you'll tell us more about that.
Hi, I'm Sue Kunda, and I'm a librarian here at Western, and I'm going to talk today about a course that Jacqueline Cares-Hurley developed around diversifying and decolonizing the curriculum. And the way I got involved in this project was Shell Batchelor and I were kind of batting around ideas about we wanted to propose something for Provost Cole had put out a call for funding for decolonizing the curriculum. So we were thinking about about proposals that we might do. And we talked about an equity and open education cohort model that Open Oregon Educational Resources has provided for some of our faculty members. And we decided that that might be an idea of a way to develop the course. So knowing that Jacqueline Cares-Hurley was actually a coordinator and a consultant on that program, we reached out to her, well rather Shell reached out to her, and asked if she wanted to become involved, and she said yes, and she jumped on board. She kind of spearheaded the budget proposal, which was accepted, and then she did everything but to develop this course. But unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. And because I took the course and did a project with it, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we learned in the course. So the course was divided into approximately 8 or 9 weeks. I can't remember how many weeks because it was last spring. And so there were 10 of us, and we met with Jacqueline and talked about the course, what it was going to be about. And then we had 4 weeks where we learned about topics that related to diversifying and decolonizing the curriculum. And then after those 4 weeks, we took the things that we learned and worked with Jacqueline to come up with a project or just one thing that we could incorporate into the curriculums or courses that we taught. And then we took the next week to actually implement those practices. And then the last week was we all came together and talked about, shared everything that we'd learned and the whole group discussion about how things went. So I'm going to talk about the 4 topics that we went through and talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to share with you the project that I did. I obviously don't have a curriculum or course, but I did find something that I could do related to this topic. So the first topic was culturally sustaining pedagogy. That is about making sure that students' background and identities are celebrated, not just acknowledged in the classroom. So it goes beyond just recognizing diversity, but it actively supports students' cultural and linguistic identities as they learn, rather than trying to force them into maybe fitting into the dominant cultural norms. It's more about encouraging them to actually grow and hold on to their cultural identities and perspectives. So this makes a much more inclusive classroom environment because everyone can feel like their background is important and can be seen as an asset rather than deficit. So the next one was socio-political development and social education justice. And I want to say that some of these terms are long and I may stumble over them, but I'll start with socio-political development. And generally, socio-political development is helping people understand how these bigger social, political, and economic forces impact their lives and their communities. So when we take that down into the classroom in education, it's about students looking around at the systems and structures around them, starting to think critically about issues such as power and privilege, and then to start recognizing how in the ways in which injustices actually show up in everyday life. By understanding these broader dynamics, by understanding these broader dynamics, then students become more aware of how social and historical and social issues have shaped their experiences as well as other people's experiences. And then the second part, social justice education, really goes hand in hand with socio-political development. Social justice education is about teaching students to learn about the dominant or the different forms of oppression that they might experience in our culture or they might see. So those are things like racism, sexism, and classism. But social education is not just about learning about these issues, it's also about figuring out how to take action. So students think very deeply about social issues, and then they consider how they might be able to make positive change within their own environments. And then when you put these two together, both socio-political development and social justice education, you're really building a strong foundation for students to become active, engaged citizens who care deeply and want to make society a fairer place for everyone. And then thirdly, we learned about translanguaging. And translanguaging is about allowing students to use any and all of the languages that they know in the classroom, rather than separating out languages or making students stick to one language. It's about bringing those bringing those languages in and allowing students to mix those languages, to express their ideas, and to make understanding of what they're learning. For multilingual students, this means that they can bring their entire selves to the classroom. It makes their language skills more valuable to others. And then the last one, which is open education resources, which is something I know a little bit about, so I can talk a little bit more about that. So open educational materials are materials that are openly available, and they have open licenses, which means you can remix them, you can share them, you can copy them, you can change them. You can pretty much do anything you want with them as long as you're within the parameters of the license. And I think the great thing about open educational resources is they can be a vehicle for unfolding all these other issues that I discussed earlier. So for something like culturally sustaining pedagogy, an instructor can bring in readings and resources that reflect students' identities better than it might in the standard textbook. And that way it makes the learning more relevant and more validating. Also for socio-political and social education justice issues, an instructor can use up-to-date materials like real-world examples, and they can bring in maybe stories from activists, and they could even have students have their own writings and reflections incorporated into the OER. And then finally, for translanguaging, the instructor can provide multiple languages so students can use the language that they feel most comfortable in their learning environment. Each of us had to do some type of project where we incorporated what we'd learned into our curriculum. And like I said, I don't necessarily have a curriculum. So with Jacqueline's blessing, I actually developed or edited the module number 4, which was open education resources. And so I completely changed that so that it reflected the things that we had learned. First of all, I had to go and learn things. And like a good librarian, I just Googled OER and decolonization, and I found several things. One of them was this blog post, Can We Decolonize OER? Another was this video about indigenous OERs. There is often some tension between open education and indigenous knowledge, and it's something that we need to be very respectful of. And then the last thing was there is a framework and guide out of the California Community Colleges organization where it actually has an explanation of how to look through an OER, and there's a rubric for evaluating open educational resources. So then I actually created 2 different modules. The first one was for faculty who don't currently use open educational resources in their curriculum. This module was intended just to provide information. It wasn't about kind of forcing faculty to use OER, because I think open educational resources are great, but they're not for every course, and it's not always, you can't always find them. So I just wanted to provide some information. So this was the week's resources. And let me go back for just a minute. So what Jacqueline had for each module was she had information, kind of this essential question that we had to think about. And then she had resources and activities that we could do. But we didn't have to do all of them. There were just several opportunities, and you could choose the one or two that you felt was most appropriate for your use. So this was the first part. This was the resource. And then these were activities, so they could search the Open Textbook Network for an open educational resource and then use the rubric to evaluate that. But also, Open Educational Resources provides funding for different professional development. So there are those types of events are also listed on here. Then the second module was for those faculty who are currently using open educational resources. And I started with some information, and right now there's not a document or a resource out there to send people to. And say, here you can read about decolonizing in OER, so I actually created one with the help of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. I provided this so that they could read through and get some information. So this was kind of their resource. And then I also included that blog post I talked about, and that video, and then that framework that I discussed earlier. And their activities was to maybe use that framework and go through and look at their open educational resource and see, compare how their resource matched up with the rubric. And these were the faculty members that took part in this, and Jacqueline wanted to make sure everybody was included. So I'm just going to talk for a couple seconds, really, about my learning in this process. As I went through the course, I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. But I'm always kind of maybe second-guessing myself, or I feel conflicted about, because here I'm a member of the dominant culture, and I'm telling people how to decolonize, look at your OER and decolonize it. So I feel good that I'm providing information, but I also feel like I have a lot more to learn, and that probably a year from now, I would probably do this differently.
So our last little piece we wanted to talk about is something that's not yet quite complete, but is the future and the near future. So the near future, you're going to be hearing from CTL about something we're calling the Faculty Success Ambassadors program, or just Faculty Success Ambassadors. And our purpose is to create, there's many pieces to the purpose, but a big part of the purpose is to get some key faculty members in place around campus to support faculty within their divisions or college, the people that are around them, to help create a stronger, to strengthen and build upon the sense of community that faculty already have, to support faculty in doing very specific things with their courses, and also to support faculty in finding those resources they may need that the individual faculty success ambassador cannot provide. So helping connect faculty to the campus resources and helping connect faculty to each other, with the goal of, if we can improve faculty success, we can then directly or indirectly be improving student success. So as faculty become more confident and capable, they're able to enact better things for their students. So I won't say much more about that, but you'll hear from us soon about how you can participate in this program. So thank you very much for our presentation portion. We're now going to transition over to our panel table and take any questions, and we'll have a conversation with all of you.
Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because I was looking at that template. So there is a page for resources. Does that take the place of having that on the syllabus then?
It can. So there are certain resources that attach to policies where it's better to have it maybe in both places, but it can replace if you have like a section that's just dedicated to things like the food pantry and things that are like explicitly for students to better their lives on WU. It's just a little bit more visible than maybe in the syllabus, which we know students don't always read. And eventually we are thinking of turning that resource page into more of a like general web page that can be linked to in Canvas, so that like updates are easier. It's a little bit easier to find across courses, things like that.
Oh, okay. So how would you update it now?
So currently what I do is I update the Canvas page in our template, and then that automatically updates what goes into the dev request form, and I can also push it out to the Canvas Commons.
Okay, but if faculty are using a shell already, it doesn't update their shell.
Correct. So that's why we would eventually like it to be a website, so that it just like links, well, not a website, but a web page. So it just like links out, and then everybody's link stays the same, but the page updates.
And I'll add, it never hurts to have important information in more than one place for a student. So having some things that are, say, required in the syllabus also in that student resources page it's helpful, right? The important information we broadcast loud from everywhere.
Okay, okay.
So the question I have actually is about faculty using things like the tools and the resources that you presented today. What do you think the impact on students might be, their experience of the courses by utilizing some of these resources?
Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Well, what we're hoping to have is more consistency in design across all the courses, which will lower student cognitive load. Like basically the amount of brain power that it takes for them to learn how a new course is organized, where to find information, things like that. Or even like learning module to module sometimes where to find those things. So hopefully the template makes it easier for instructors to organize content and for students to find it so that they can focus more of their mental resources on actually learning.
Well said.
Will faculty be required to use the template?
That is not something that CTL dictates or does anything about. We highly encourage it, and we're actively trying to help faculty understand why it will help them. So why they want to use it is it makes their experience of teaching more pleasant because there's less effort they need to put out when using Canvas.
And I'll also note that the template is fully editable. So like you'll download the same template every time, but you can customize it to make a little bit more sense for whatever is in your course. But having that basic layout is really helpful to students. And we don't think that we're like throttling faculty creativity with this. Like ultimately, it's up to you what you put. We're just giving you the structure.
Yeah, and we've been talking with some faculty and getting feedback about the template and about some other things. And there's been some ideas of potentially having more than one template for different styles of how people might want to organize their course and its content. So again, trying to make these resources as useful for faculty as possible so that they want to use them, and then, as Adrian already said, that'll affect the student experience in a positive way. I had a question about the course, Sue, that you did. What was how would you say the trade-off of time and effort you put into the satisfaction you got from participating in the course? Did you feel that it was worth it? Would you do it again?
Oh, that's a good question. Any time that I get to work with faculty is time well spent. As far as the time that, for instance, if a faculty member just goes through the course, I'm assuming that we'll be doing running the course. So really the amount of time you put into it was up to you.
Okay.
There wasn't any requirements that you do any of the materials. To get the money, you had to do a project and show that. So I felt like I could have adjusted the amount of time I spent depending on what was going on in my quarter during that time. So yeah, I felt it was great. It was very adaptable.
Hi, this is Shell. I'd just like to repeat Judy's question for Sue. Like, having been in the course and learned what you learned and also kind of heard from the faculty you were working with, can you imagine impacts on students from what the faculty you were working with might have learned?
Definitely when you're looking at the curriculum and you're making it more relevant by using culturally sustainable pedagogy and you're using their different languages, it just makes the course more relevant. It makes students feel seen, just more flexible and supporting of students as a whole person rather than just having the sage on the stage and have these little cups to fill out in the classroom. So.
If a faculty member is unfamiliar with open education resources, like completely, and is interested in incorporating them into their course, where would be the best starting place for them?
The best starting place would be to contact me. I'm Sue Kunda. My email address is kundaas@wu.edu. Also, if you just Google WU OER, you'll go to webpage. We have a webpage about open educational resources, and my contact information is on there, and there's information about open educational resources there, so they can read more about it. Also, one other thing I will add is that Western has a stipend program, so faculty can receive funding to either adopt an open educational resource or adapt one or more educational resources, open educational resources, to create something for their courses. And in the past, we've had, like biology has adopted an OER, and so all Biology 101, I don't know if I'm using the right numbers, 101 and 102 are using the same textbook. Also, psychology just started this year using a textbook, an open education resource for their students. And I'm also working with faculty who are remixing different resources to create an open educational resource for their students. So we've had a lot of activity on campus.
Just like to clarify, Sue, when you say remixing, is that taking a variety of open educational resources and then putting them together?
Right. A lot of times people think of open educational resources only as textbooks, but it can be any type of curricular material. And so bringing those in, like bringing in videos and bringing in maybe, like I talked about in my when I was talking about social justice education, bringing in stories from activists and bringing all those things in. Yeah, that's remixing.
Thank you.
You mentioned a survey that you conducted with WU students, and I think you talked about a couple of things that you had heard, like that they were positive, and then also some were negative, and it sounded like it was kind of an even mix, like of the positive and negative. Were there any other takeaways from the survey that you can think of that you would want to share?
The main takeaways were what included into building the template and the reasons why. So there are courses that have a wonderful navigable design, and there are courses that don't. And so we decided that finding a way to help everyone have a more navigable Canvas course design was to build a template. If there were other takeaways, they weren't the main focus of what we felt we needed to do to affect positive change. And the survey was about the Canvas experience. So it was really all about what was the experience for students in Canvas. So there weren't a lot of other takeaways beyond what their experience in Canvas was. All right, well, I think we're just about out of time, so thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate you being here and asking questions, and I look forward to talking with you more in the future.